are going to be continuing our reading of A Damsel in Distress by PG Wodehouse. Before we get started, let's just do a quick recap of what we've already seen. There's the main girl, whose name I don't currently remember. It doesn't say here, so I don't know. God, what's her name? I don't know, I've already forgot. I'm sure it'll tell us soon. And so the main girl met a cab driver in Wales and she fell in love with him. But her dad is like a big lord man, and obviously she, as a member of the aristocracy, there we go, aristocracy, as a member of the aristocracy, she can't possibly date a measly cab driver. And her stepmom was really mad at her about it. So her stepmom was like, you can't leave the house anymore, and basically put her under house arrest. And this is also partially because the stepmom wants her to marry the stepmom's son, who is not blood related to this girl, but still. I mean, it was whatever, 1909 or whatever it was when this book takes place, but still a little icky. But obviously, Miss Girl doesn't want to marry the stepson. The stepson also doesn't want to marry her. The stepson wants to marry the Lord Father's like secretary, which also would be a scandal. Though maybe less of one, because I don't know if he's in the line of inheritance. I'm obviously not an expert on that. So then Miss Girl gets the help of the stepson to run away, not like permanently, but like just for the afternoon, just so that she can meet up with this. Actually, I don't know if he's a cab driver. I actually think he's like his uncle is some like attorney or something, and he's like a secretary to his uncle. And she heard that his uncle was gonna be in London. Maybe is this in London? I think it's in London, somewhere in Britain. And so she heard about the fact that he was coming to town. He was like, oh, if the uncle's coming, then the nephew, who she's in love with, should also be coming. So she arranges with her stepbrother to go into town, and but just like no one can see her because she's on house arrest because of her previous dalliance with the nephew or whatever. But then in town, she runs into her older brother, who seems like he hates her guts, a little unclear on why, but obviously he can't find her because if he finds her, she's really going to be in trouble because she's supposed to be in house arrest from her stepmom. So then she just like jumps into a random cab, and in this cab is George, who's the male lead of the book. And George like had already seen her and thought, oh my god, that girl's so pretty, I'll never find someone as pretty as her. And then she like jumps in his cab or whatever, and she's like, you have to hide me. And he's like, okay, fun little adventure. So he helps her hide from his brother, and his brother like from her brother, and her brother like saw her get into the cab, right? So her brother's like running up to the cabin like, hey, I know that there's a girl in there and I need to talk to her. And George is like, I know, there's no girl here, sir. And then they like have a little bit of a tuffle. Hi to people just joining, I'm just recapping what we've already read in this book, and then we'll get into read. So then they had a little bit of a discussion, and George is like, I will punch you if you try to get into this cab and try to recover this girl. And eventually the cab's just able to drive away and they're fine. So we're starting chapter 4. I don't know how far we'll get. I think I only read it one chapter today because I got a lot of stuff to get done today. Okay, so, well, that's that, said George. I'm so much obliged, said the girl. It was a pleasure, said George. He was enabled now to get a closer, more leisurely, and much more satisfactory view of this distressed damsel, the title of the book, that had been his good fortune up to the present. Small details which, when he had first caught sight of her, distance had hidden from his view, now presented themselves. Her eyes, he discovered, which he had supposed brown, were only brown in their general color scheme. They were shot with attractive little flecks of gold, matching perfectly the little streaks of gold which the sun, coming out again on one of his flying visits, and now shiningly this word's hard to pronounce, benignantly, in a benign way, once more in the world, revealed in her hair. Her chin was scarce and determined, but its resoluteness was contradicted by a dimple and by the pleasant good humor of the mouth, and a further softening of the face was effected by the nose, which seemed to have started out with the intention of being dignified and aristocratic, but had defeated its purpose by tilting very slightly at the tip. This was a girl who would take chances, but would take them with a smile and laugh when she lost. George was but an amateur physiognomist, but he could read what was obvious in the faces he encountered, and the more he looked at this girl, the less he was able to understand the scene which has just occurred. The thing mystified him completely. For all her good humor, there was an air, a manner, something capable and defensive about this girl with which he could not imagine any man venturing to take liberties. The gold-brown eyes, as they met his now, were friendly and smiling, but he could imagine them freezing into a stare baleful enough and haughty enough to quell such a person as the silk-hatted young man with a single glance. That's her brother, the silk-hatted young man. Why then had that super-fatted individual been able to demoralize her to the extent of flying to the shelter of strange cabs? She was composed enough now, it was true, but it had been quite plain at the moment when she entered the taxi, her nerve had momentarily forsaken her. Hi everyone! There were mysteries here beyond George. The girl looked steadily at George, and George looked steadily at her for the space of perhaps 10 seconds. She seemed to George to be summing him up, weighing him. That the inspection proved satisfactory was shown by the fact that at the end of this period she smiled. Then she laughed, a clear, pealing laugh, which to George was far more musical than the most popular song hit he had ever written. Oh yeah, he's a musical writer, he's not a playwright. I suppose you are wondering what it's all about, she said. This was precisely what George was wondering, most consumedly. No, he said. Not at all. It's not my business. And of course you're much too well bred to be inquisitive about other people's business. Of course I am. What was it all about? I'm afraid I can't tell you. But what am I to say to the cabman? I don't know. What do men usually say to cabmen? I mean, he will feel very hurt if I don't give him a full explanation of all this. He stooped from his pedals to make inquiries just now. Condescension like that deserves some recognition. Give him a nice big tip. George was reminded of his reason for being in the cab. I ought to have asked before, he said. Where can I drive you? Oh, I mustn't steal your cab. Where were you going? I was going back to my hotel. I came out without any money, so I shall have to go there first to get some. The girl started. What's the matter? Asked George. I've lost my purse. Good Lord, had it much in it? Not very much, but enough to buy a ticket home. Any use asking where there is? None, I'm afraid. I wasn't going to, of course. Of course not. That's what I admire so much in you. You are inquisitive. George reflected. There's only one thing to be done. You will have to wait in the cab at the hotel while I go and get some money. Then, if you'll let me, I can lend you what you require. It's much too kind of you. Could you manage 11 shillings? I really like the British humor in this, where it's like sort of understated and like the sort of like affectation of like being really polite but like immediately dropping the facade. It's much too kind of you. You don't have to do it, but also it's 11 shillings. I'm ready to receive it. Thank you. Easily. I've just had a legacy. Of course, if you think I ought to be economical, I'll go third class. That would only be 5 shillings. 10 and 6 is the first class fare. So you see the place I want to get to is 2 hours from London. Well, that's something to know. But not much, is it? I think I had better lend you a sovereign. Then you'll be able to buy a lunch basket. I have no idea what a sovereign is. Maybe like a check? You think of everything, and you're perfectly right. I shall be starving. But how do you know you will get the money back? I'll risk it. Well then, I shall have to be inquisitive and ask her name. Otherwise, I shan't know where to send the money. Oh, there's no mystery about me. I'm an open book. You needn't be horrid about it. I can't help being mysterious. I didn't mean that. It sounded as if you did. Well, who's my benefactor? My name is George Bevan. I am staying at the Carlton at present. I'll remember. The taxi moved slowly toward the Haymarket. The girl laughed. Yes, said George. I was only thinking of back there. You know, I haven't thanked you nearly enough for all you did. You were wonderful. I'm very glad I was able to be of any help. What did happen? You must remember I couldn't see a thing except your back, and I could only hear indistinctly. Well, it started by a man galloping up and insisting that you had got into the cab. He was a fellow with the appearance of a before-using advertisement of an anti-fat medicine and the manners of a ring-tailed chimpanzee. The girl nodded. Then it was Percy. I knew I wasn't mistaken. Percy, that is his name. It would be. I could have betted on it. Percy is kind of like an annoying guy name, you know? Other notable Percys, Percy Weasley. Though, of course, it must be mentioned, I don't support J.K. Rowling or her views. Anytime you mention Harry Potter, you kind of have to put that disclaimer in. Anyway, what happened then? I reasoned with the man, but didn't seem to soothe him, and finally he made a grab for the door handle, so I knocked off his hat, and while he was retrieving it, we moved on and escaped. Oh, I forgot about that bit where he knocked off the hat. The girl gave another silver peal of laughter. Oh, what a shame I couldn't see it. But how resourceful of you. How did you happen to think of it? It just came to me, said George modestly. A serious look came into the girl's face. The smile died out of her eyes. She shivered. When I think how some man might have behaved in your place. Oh no, any man would have done just what I did. Surely, knocking off Percy's hat was an act of simple courtesy which anyone would have performed automatically. You might have been some awful bounder, or what would have been almost worse, a slow-witted idiot who would have stopped to ask questions before doing anything. To think I should have had the luck to pick you out of all of London. I'd been looking on it as a piece of luck, but entirely from my viewpoint. She put a small hand on his arms and spoke earnestly. Mr. Bevan, you mustn't think that, because I've been laughing a good deal and have seemed to treat all this as a joke. You haven't saved me from real trouble. If you hadn't been there and hadn't acted with such presence of mind, it would have been terrible. But surely, if that fellow was annoying you, you could have called a policeman? Oh, it wasn't anything like that. It was much, much worse. But I mustn't go on like this. It isn't fair on you. Her eyes lit up again with the old shining smile. I know you have no curiosity about me. But still, there's no knowing whether I might not arise some if I went on piling up the mystery. And the silly part is that there's really no mystery at all. It's just that I can't tell anyone about it. That very fact seems to me to constitute the makings of a pretty fair mystery. Well, what I mean is, I'm not a princess in disguise trying to escape from anarchists or anything like those things you read about in books. I'm just in a perfectly simple piece of trouble. You would be bored to death if I told you about it. Try me. She shook her head. No, besides, here we are. The cab had stopped at the hotel, and a commissionaire was already opening the door. Now, if you haven't repented of your rash offer and really are going to be so awfully kind as to let me have that money, would you mind rushing off and getting it? Because I must hurry. I can just catch a good train, and it's hours to the next. Will you wait here? I'll be back in a moment. Very well. The last George saw of her was another of those exhilarating smiles of hers. It was literally the last he saw of her, for when he returned, not more than 2 minutes later, the cab had gone, the girl had gone, and the world was empty. To him, gaping at this wholly unforeseen calamity, the commissionaire vouchsafed information. The young lady took the cab on, sir. Took the cab on? Almost immediately after you had gone, sir. She got in again and told the man to drive to Waterloo. George could make nothing of it. He stood there in silent perplexity, and might have continued to stand indefinitely had not his mind been distracted by a dictatorial voice at his elbow. You, sir! Damn it! A second taxicab had pulled up, and from it a stout, scarlet-faced young man had sprung. One glance told George all. The hunt was up once more. The bloodhound had picked up the trail. Percy was in again. For the first time since he had become aware of a flight, George was thankful that the girl had disappeared. He perceived that he had too quickly eliminated Percy from the list of things that matter. Kind of hilarious. I would have done the same. Engrossed with his own affairs, and having regarded their late skirmish as a decisive battle from which there would be no rallying, he had overlooked the possibility of this annoying and unnecessary person following them in another cab, a task which, in the congested, slow-moving traffic, must have been a perfectly simple one. Well, here he was, his soul manifestly all stirred up, and his blood pressure at a far higher figure than his doctor would have approved of, and the matter would have to be opened all over again. Now then, said the stout young man. George regarded him with a critical and unfriendly eye. He disliked this fatty degeneration excessively. Looking him up and down, he could find no point about him that gave him the least pleasure, with the single exception of the state of his hat, in the side of which he was rejoiced to perceive there was a large and unshapely dent. You thought you had shaken me off. You thought you'd given me the slip. Well, you're wrong. George eyed him coldly. I know what's the matter with you, he said. Someone's been feeding you meat. The young man bubbled with fury. His face turned a deeper scarlet. He gesticulated. You blackguard! Where's my sister? At this extraordinary remark, the world rocked about George dizzily. The words upset his entire diagnosis of the situation. Up until that moment, he had looked upon this man as a Lothario, a pursuer of damsels. That the other could possibly have any right on his side had never occurred to him. He felt unmanned by the shock. It seemed to cut the ground from under his feet. Your sister! You heard what I said. Where is she? George was still endeavoring to adjust his scattered faculties. He felt foolish and apologetic. He had imagined himself unassailably in the right, and now it appeared that he was in the wrong. Kind of wild for him to assume that just because he's her older brother, then he has any claim to her, but whatever. It is 1909 or whatever. For a moment he was about to become conciliatory. Then the recollection of the girl's panic and her hints at some trouble which threatened her, presumably through the medium of this man, brother or no brother, checked him. He did not know what it was all about, but the one thing that did stand out clearly in the welter of confused happenings was the girl's need for his assistance. Whatever might be the rights of the case, he was her accomplice and must behave as such. I love a ride or die. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. The young man shook a large, gloved fist in his face. You blackguard. I have no idea what blackguard means. I hope it's not like a racist term. A rich, deep, soft, soothing voice slid into the heated scene like the Holy Grail, sliding athwart a sunbeam. What's all this? A vast policeman had materialized from nowhere. Uh-oh. He stood beside them, a living statue of vigilant authority. One thumb rested easily on his broad belt. The fingers of the other hand caressed lightly a mustache that had caused more heartburnings among the gentler sex than any other two mustaches in the C division. What? The eyes above the mustache were stern and questioning. What's all this? George liked policemen. He knew the way to treat them. His voice, when he replied, had precisely the correct note of respectful deference which the force likes to hear. I really couldn't say, officer, he said, with just that air of having, in a time of trouble, found a kind elder brother to help him out of his difficulties, which made the constable his ally on the spot. I was standing here when this man suddenly made his extraordinary attack on me. I wish you would ask him to go away. The policeman tapped the stout young man on the shoulder. This won't do, you know, he said austerely. This sort of thing won't do here, you know. Take your hands off me, snorted Percy. A frown appeared on the Olympian brow. Jove reached for his thunderbolts. Hello, 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 what? He said in a shocked voice, as of a god defied by a mortal. Hello, hello, hello. Is he saying hello in a British accent? Baffling. His fingers fell on Percy's shoulder again, but this time not in a mere warning tap. They rested where they fell, in an iron clutch. It won't do, you know, he said. This sort of thing won't do. Madness came upon the stout young man. Common prudence and the lessons of a carefully taught youth fell from him like a garment. With an incoherent howl, he wriggled around and punched the policeman smartly in the stomach. Ho! Quoth the outraged officer, suddenly becoming human. His left hand removed itself from the belt, and he got a businesslike grip on his adversary's collar. Will you come along with me? It was amazing. The thing had happened in such an incredibly brief space of time. One moment it seemed to George he was the center of a nasty row in one of the most public spots in London. The next, the focus had shifted. He had ceased to matter, and the entire attention of the metropolis was focused on his late assailant, as, urged by the arm of the law, he made that journey to Vine Street Police Station, which so many a better man than he had trod. George watched the pair as they moved up the Haymarket, followed by a growing and increasingly absorbed crowd. Then he turned into the hotel. This, he said to himself, is the middle of a perfect day, and I thought London dull. Oh yeah, I also forgot to say in the beginning, George is a playwright / musical writer from America, and he's in London to show his newest concert. So that's the end of chapter 4. We will do chapter 5 next time. Just a quick little live today. I got a shit ton of stuff to get done, so I gotta go do that. But I enjoyed that chapter. It was fun. I liked that the main girl character, whose name still escaped me, didn't tell anything about herself to George. I thought that was really cute. I do find Percy too much of a one-dimension character of a villain, not to mention all the fat phobia that's directed towards him, but when you're reading a book this old, you gotta make allowances, you know? You can't expect it to really conform to modern sensibilities, even though, of course, it's still worthy of criticism. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Make sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.